Hey gang, thanks for joining me for Two Texas Lobsters React. And as promised, I've got a special guest. It's Miggy, my wife, my second lobster, and I'm so glad to be here home with her from Omaha, Nebraska. Today I've got a special surprise for you. Not just Miggy, but we've got a great video. It's called How Sloppy Joe's Became a School Lunch Legend. And we're going to get right into that. I do want to mention to some of the subscribers who are asking about the Napoleon series. Yes, we are going to get into that. That's going to drop this weekend at some point. We're going to react to it. And I really do appreciate all the comments that you're making. Just know there's been some transitioning. So it was a 13-hour drive from Omaha, Nebraska back to Dallas, Texas, where I live. And I appreciate your patience. Anyway, keep the comments coming. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get on into the video.
For decades, the Sloppy Joe has been a staple for hungry Americans at dinner time.
I mean, God did take time out of his busy schedule to bless these Sloppy Joes.
Or really, anytime you feel like eating an extremely wet sandwich. But where did Sloppy Joes come from? And how did they become so popular? Today, we're going to take a look at the history of the Sloppy Joe.
I can make a mean Sloppy Joe. Pretty good? Yeah.
But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel and let us know in the comments below what other comfort foods you would like to hear about. Okay, time to pay a visit to Lunch Lady Land.
I made an extra sloppy for you.
The Sloppy Joe was invented in Iowa, or Florida, or Cuba, but definitely one of those three, maybe. Okay, no one knows for sure exactly where or when the Sloppy Joe was first created, but there are at least three major theories. The first proposed origin for Sloppy Joe would place its creation in 19...
Sloppy Joes is they're so greasy. You know, that's why you gotta use lean meat, right? Lean meat. That works. That's the secret to a good Sloppy Joe, in my opinion. Some people like them really greasy.
30 at Fred Angel's Cafe in Sioux City, Iowa. According to this origin story, a chef named Joe added tomato sauce to a loose meat sandwich and bam! The Sloppy Joe was born.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Okay, so maybe it's not that amazing a story, but does it check out? Well, loose meat sandwiches were a staple in the American Midwest, so it's certainly possible, but without a last name on Chef Joe, it's pretty much impossible to tell if he ever really existed. Still, we can't rule it out. The next tale of creation would place the invention of the Sloppy Joe at a bar in Key West, Florida, called Sloppy Joe's. This particular bar opened on December 5th, 1933, which was the day Prohibition was repealed. Listen, you need to have some hangover food on the menu if you're going to start slinging booze again. It was so famous in its heyday that it actually gets name-dropped in Orson Welles' 1941 classic, Citizen Kane.
Sloppy Joe's.
But we'll get back to that place in a minute. The final theory features a guest appearance by a celebrity author. Please, please, please let it be Dean Koontz. Come on, Dean. This theory claims that the Sloppy Joe was born at a saloon in Havana, Cuba, called the Havana Club. The establishment served a handheld version of the traditional Cuban dish, ropa vieja. Ropa vieja is basically just shredded beef stewed in a tomato-based sauce.
Yeah, that does look good. What's it got in it? Peppers, it looks like.
Peppers.
Looks like beef. Yeah,
Two different kinds of peppers. Red peppers, green peppers, onions.
I can see that becoming a Sloppy Joe.
So the sandwich version would be something very close to a Sloppy Joe. The club's nickname, which was Sloppy Joe's because the place was so messy, was then attached to the sandwich. The sandwich, or possibly just the name Sloppy Joe, allegedly found its way to the United States via legendary writer Ernest Hemingway. He's no Dean Koontz. According to the story, Hemingway convinced Joe Russell, the proprietor of his favorite Key West bar, the Silver Slipper, to rename his establishment Sloppy Joe's. Yep, the same Key West bar mentioned in theory number 2. Not sure what that means. Maybe nothing, or maybe everything. But do any of these stories really recount the origin of the Sloppy Joe? Maybe, but it's worth mentioning that ground beef has been a popular ingredient in American cuisine since the 1800s, which means that little hamburger helper glove may have fought in the Civil War. The Sloppy Joe may just be a variation on the loose meat sandwich, which first became popular in the American Midwest during the
I remember a hamburger helper. big in the 80s. And my mom, everything was hamburger helper. If it wasn't Spam and fried potatoes and hot dogs cut in half with cheddar cheese and barbecue, it was hamburger helper.
Ours was tuna helper.
Oh, God, I'm
that
sorry.
was pretty rough.
20s. In fact, early 20th century cookbooks feature several sandwiches that are extremely similar to the Sloppy Joe, under names like Hamburg a la Creole, Toasted Deviled Hamburgers, Spanish Hamburgers, and Beef Mironton. As for the name Sloppy Joe, it may come from the fact that the sandwiches were served in 1930s-era restaurants informally called Sloppy Joes, or from the simple fact that Sloppy Joes are kind of a pain in the ass to eat. In fact, the name Joe might not even refer to a specific person at all. As the Encyclopedia of American Food and Drink notes, that Joe is often used in America as a generic name for a random everyman. You know, as in G.I. Joe or Average Joe. These are just theories, though. All we really know for sure is that the name Sloppy Joe first appeared in print in a 1940 advertisement for a restaurant in the great state of Ohio. So we will probably never know for sure whether the Sloppy Joe really had a single inventor or how it exactly got its name. While the Sloppy Joe is pretty universal these days, the sandwich does still go by some other names. For example, in northern Rhode Island, they're sometimes known as dynamites. Presumably, they based that name on what happens after you eat one. In parts of southeastern Wisconsin, like Sheboygan, they're called hot tamales. Central Minnesota went in a feminist direction and called them sloppy janes. In parts of Montana and North Dakota, they're known as slush burgers. That's a pretty good name, actually. If you want one in Maryland, Virginia, or West Virginia, you might have to order a steamer. Wait, really? In northeastern Pennsylvania, you'd ask for a wimpy. In other parts of the U.S., Sloppy Joes go under names like barbecues, goulash, Spanish hamburgers, taverns, and yum-ums. Up in Canada, the land of Ryan Reynolds and Rush, you'll find them going under the name Victory Burgers, presumably because every bite is a triumph of flavor. But the bottom line is, a Sloppy Joe by any other name still tastes as sweet.
Oh my goodness. Put tons of cheese on it.
Sloppy Joes may have originated in Iowa or Florida or Cuba or somewhere else entirely, but where they really came to thrive was in school cafeterias. If you went to public school in the United States, you probably remember being served Sloppy Joes on a fairly frequent basis. The reason for this is pretty simple. Public schools have to provide filling meals to children, and they usually have to do it on a budget. And nothing screams budget nutrition like a pile of wet loose beef on a sandwich. According to Robert Jaber, the director of the Office of Food and Nutrition Services for District of Columbia Public Schools, the Sloppy Joe, if served properly, can be the perfect combination of economics, nutrition, heartiness, and student acceptance. It's a perfect fit for a school menu. From a nutritional perspective, it's pretty easy to sneak some vegetables into the recipe without kids even realizing they're there. You could probably sneak a finger in there and nobody would notice. You remember?
What was your favorite school lunch?
I went to private school. We didn't have like a cafeteria where they actually made the food, but I liked their burgers. They used to come in this cellophane package, and it was soy burgers. It was probably really disgusting now, but back then it was so good. It had this nasty processed cheese on it.
I do remember the burgers. They were good. I like the pizza too.
Yeah, but you went to a public school.
I did. And we had.
And y'all actually had people back there cooking burgers.
We did. Oh, you had them brought in.
No, yeah. I mean, they like microwaved them. They came in a package and they microwaved them.
We had Texas goulash. Do you remember that? It was like hamburger meat, like Sloppy Joe meat with a little tomato sauce.
It's kind of like a stew.
Yeah, noodles in it. It was drier than a stew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those were good days.
Remember me telling Jimbo Jones that I'd make something of him one day?
Sloppy Joes are such a fixture in school cafeterias that they inspired Adam Sandler. The classic 1994 Saturday Night Live sketch starring Sandler, Chris Farley, and Kevin Nealon featured Sandler singing a song about angry cafeteria food, revolting against the lunch lady. He was played by Farley. In the end, a Sloppy Joe, played by Nealon, saves the day and marries the lunch lady. Hashtag relationship goals. Given all this, you can probably expect Sloppy Joes to maintain their status as school cafeteria staples for the foreseeable future.
And which?
In 1969, Hunt's Food, most widely known for their ketchup, launched a brand of canned Sloppy Joe sauce called Manwich, which suggests that the sandwich smells like Old Spice and knows a lot about The Godfather. Advertisements featured the slogan,
A sandwich is a sandwich, but a manwich is a meal.
despite the fact
You
that it
remember
doesn't
that?
make a lot of sense. It must have struck a chord with the public because during the 70s and 80s, both the brand and the popularity of canned Sloppy Joes soared. In fact, although recipes for Sloppy Joes appeared in cookbooks as early as the 1940s, it wasn't until the rise of Manwich that the dish became a staple in American homes. And why not? Cooking with Manwich could barely be any easier. You brown some ground beef, add the can of sauce, put the mixture on a bun, and baby, that is a Manwich. And if that's too complicated for you,
It does look like cat food. But, when this started to happen, late 70s. When did they say this Manwich came out? Late 70s, all throughout the 80s, what you had was women going back to work. The TV dinner became a huge thing. Manwich became a huge thing. Anything you could put in the microwave was a big deal because women weren't home. They were all trying to make ends meet.
in 2004, Hunt's launched Manwich's Heat and Serve, which already has the meat in it. In 2009, Manwich jumped on the healthy foods bandwagon and adopted a new slogan, Manwich, meet your vegetables. The delicious pun might make you wonder if Manwiches really are good for you. And the answer is a resounding, they're not particularly healthy, but they're not that bad for you.
Look
either.
at the
Allow us to break it
the
down.
second the second ingredient in that was high fructose corn syrup.
Sugar.
On one hand, the tomatoes in Manwich contain various nutrients, vitamins, and even an antioxidant that may lower the risk of cancer. On the other hand, it contains a startling amount of high fructose corn syrup, which can lead to diabetes, insulin resistance, and high blood pressure. So you could definitely do better than a Manwich, but also nobody eats a Manwich because they're on a diet. It hasn't been all smooth sailing for Manwich. It experienced some bumps in the road following a poorly conceived 2011 advertising campaign. The campaign featured a series of ads that depicted men showing an interest in feminine things like shoes, hairstyling, or musical theater, only to be slapped in the face by an off-camera hand and told, "It's called a Manwich." Generally speaking, this isn't a great strategy to sell sandwiches. A petition on change.org criticizing the ads collected enough signatures for Hunts to take notice. They apologized, and the campaign was quickly pulled.
Oh, White Castle.
Black Castle.
Roughly 90 years after the creation of the Sloppy Joe, the sandwich is still going strong, as are some of the places associated with its creation. Sloppy Joe's in Key West, for example, is still open and selling somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 Sloppy Joes a year. That's a hell of a lot of wet naps. Their version is made with ground beef, a sweet and rich tomato sauce, onions, peppers, and spices.
That looks really good.
But it looks like Manwich.
Yeah.
It's really
Sells for $13.99. And while Jose Obiel Otero's Havana Club was closed in 1959, it reopened in 2013 and is still serving their trademark Sloppy Joe sandwiches today.
Oh, wow.
Sloppy Joes remain a mainstay on school cafeteria menus, and they've even started to make appearances on fast food menus.
looks good.
For example, in 2020, White Castle released the Sloppy Joe Slider as a limited time menu item, and then brought it back in November of 2022 for a promotion called Jovember. Their version includes a Spicy Joe with smoked jalapeno cheese and jalapeno crisps, a Smoky Joe with smoked cheddar cheese and crispy onions, and a classic 99-cent Sloppy Joe slider.
That's
Manwich is also still out there. And like White Castle, they've been mixing things up a little too. Whereas the original Manwich was flavored with things like chili peppers and garlic, the company now sells a thick and chunky version, made with dried onions and diced green and red bell peppers. There's also a bold Manwich, which contains, boldness, apparently. And a bourbon barbecue variation that contains honey, molasses, mesquite smoke flavor,
looks good.
mustard, paprika, and actual bourbon. How bourbon wasn't already an ingredient in something called a Manwich will remain as mysterious as the sandwich's secret origins. So what do you think? Sloppy Joes, love them or really love them?
Do you like them?
I like them. They're not my favorite, but I like them.
I actually really like them a lot. I could eat them almost any time. And I did not know White Castle had a version of it.
No, but now that I have a cat in my lap and it's looking like cat food.
This is Maury. If you can see Maury, she's gonna horn in on every video. So her actual name is Mortimer Underpants McPherson. So you may see her a lot. She'll be the star of the show. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't already, please hit the notification bell, subscribe, like, and share. We appreciate it. It really helps us out a lot. We'll see you next time.
Folks.
Bye.